Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 188 of ARP. And this is a very special episode because if you've been listening for a long time, you know that Dr. James Lane Reichenbach don't like having guests. That's right. This is my own platform, my own pedestal, my own egg crate to stand on, rant and rave, and tell you the truth as I see it. But you know, once in a while, the stars align, the planets get together in a row, the moon switches its orbit, the poles shift, and something happens in the sky. The equinox goes that way, Sagittarius explodes to the left, the black hole starts consuming everything, and lo and behold, a guest appears on ARP. Well, we have a guest for you today, and a very special guest. We have a gentleman from Florida running for the U.S. Senate. His name is Edward A. Gray. I'm very, very excited to talk to him. Really quick, I just want to let you know this episode is being done in conjunction with CPOTUS. That's the Constitutional Party of the United States, super PAC down in Florida that goes after candidates who stand by our Constitution. They go after them, they find them, they work with them, they help them, they sponsor events, they do everything you can do imaginable to make sure our Constitution is taken into consideration when it comes to our Congress and our Senate. So without further ado, and real quick, if you're really feeling generous already, we've got 4 QR codes on the side of the screen here. You can always donate crypto, or you can go to www.americanreveille.com or ar.wtf. That's real easy, ar.wtf. Hit the donate tab at the top, and please give what you can. It helps us in our daily operations. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my interview with Mr. Edward A. Gray.
That was my idea with the creation of the American Patriot Movement, was regular Americans start taking these positions in government and stop electing people that they think are above and beyond them. It's not. It's the country was founded on the principle of by the people, for the people, and of the people. And that's what we really need, is we need regular Americans to get into these places in government and say, no, you're missing the point. Let's bring some common sense in there. Let me tell you about my point of view of growing and living paycheck to paycheck and raising a family and going to a job every day. Those types of things, they need to have more realization of that in DC.
We're talking here about trying to get people that have different viewpoints to talk. And right now, nobody's talking. Right. As you know, nobody's talking. What you're talking about, what we're going back and forth about, makes sense. It makes sense to logical people, but nobody's even there. You said before, we've got politicians. You've said we've got Green Deal, progressive folks, right? All of those, and they're all doing their own thing, but nobody's talking. And I happen to think that some of that might have to do with social media. You know, I think that's a new problem we're not addressing. You know, everybody has their own bubble and nobody needs to talk anymore. And I think it's creating very dangerous divisions.
You know, it could go either way. I think one of the things that caught my interest was Elon Musk trying to buy Twitter, and there being such an uproar from what people call the left as far as, well, he's going to change what we perceive as the truth. And that's where the problem lies, is there's only one truth and there's only one perception of the truth. You can't have your own perception of truth.
Yes.
Truth is truth. A lie is a lie. There's no black and white. It's just the way it is. There's no gray area, I should say.
Well, it's true. Truth is truth. A lie is a lie. And that's where we're here, starting with Edward Gray, right? Ed or Edward?
Edward
right.
A. Gray.
So Edward A. Gray, running for U.S. Representative for Florida. That's the U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate.
Yes. And I wanted to know a little bit about you. We're going to get into a lot of different stuff, some questions. We're going to have more conversations like we're having right now. It's going to be really good stuff. But I want you to take a couple minutes and just tell everybody about yourself, just where you come from, who you are, what you do for work, what your plans are, just a couple minutes, and then we'll get into some stuff.
Certainly, yes. My name is Edward A. Gray. I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, back in the 70s. I'm a 62-year-old male. I have This is my third wife. I've been a very lucky man to find women that fall in love with me as much as I fall in love with them, and each one has been an interesting time. Originally on my bio, I had broken it down. My first wife, I was very young, and I had joined the army, and that didn't help our marriage any. When I got out, we ended up getting divorced. My second wife and I were together almost 20 years, and that's where my daughter, who is now 30, came from. There was a problem with that, and it was really my fault. But she ended up dying, and I
Oh,
ended
I'm
up
sorry to
getting
hear
a
that.
daughter and raising her on my own until I met my third wife. And yeah, it was very trying raising a young
Yeah,
girl. I got her when she was 10, and it
yeah.
was until about 14 when I met my third wife.
I
But
can I can imagine too. She probably, with the situation that happened, you both were grieving and going through trauma, and you had to heal together. I mean, that must have been a very difficult time.
it was there was a lot of crying,
Yeah,
wearing a lot of sunglasses because men don't cry.
yeah, but you get a
But
lot of
I
wisdom
I
out of
did
that too.
try, and I did share with my daughter that, it's all right to express your emotions, and that's how you there's no getting over it. There's only learning to live with it, and that's really where it's at, is you've got to learn. That's that's the secret of life, is knowing that it's not what's thrown at you, it's how you handle what's thrown at you.
Yeah,
And that's what I've tried to raise her with, was how you handle it is what makes you who you are.
that's really good words
So
of
after
advice.
that, like I said, I've met my third wife now, and she's Italian, and she's a great woman. She loves pasta and all Italian foods, and
What's
I'm
wrong with
learning.
pasta? I love pasta too.
Well, there's been some interesting situations about that. I came in with all pastas are the same thing, and that almost got me killed because of it. But
Oh, that's funny.
because
That's
she's
funny.
from Staten Island, and she's like, I'll get my cousin Vinny down here from New York, and
She'll get the cousin Vinny down here from New York.
yeah.
It's time. That's funny. I've been to
Um,
Staten Island before. I is it true? Tell me if I'm wrong. But when I was there, they said there used to be a nickname for Staten Island. They said it was called Stinky Island.
Yeah, because it was originally, I guess, built on some type of. Her brother still lives up there. He's a retired security
Mm-hmm.
for what's the name of the prison out on the water?
Oh, Rikers.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
he was
Rikers
a
Island.
prison guard for Rikers for a long time. If you can imagine, I could never. I've seen movies about it, but I could never imagine actually being a prison guard there. And he did it for many years. But
Oh,
yeah, Rikers Island was very stinky.
okay. All right. All right.
He made
So your
change the
third
name,
wife.
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Because her parents, her great parents, great grandparents came over, and they were D Amico with the apostrophe after the D.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, when they came into Rikers, not Rikers, but when they came into not Staten,
It's the
where the
port
Statue of
of New York
Liberty
City,
is.
right? Yeah. I forgot what that's called. The Bay. It's something Bay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they made them change it, so it just turned into D Amico, and they had to drop the apostrophe,
Ah,
which is weird, but
things
history, I guess.
different time, right? A different time.
Yeah, a lot different
All
time,
right. So
a lot.
third wife, right? Tragic situation you went through, but I mean, you overcame the situation, raised a young daughter, a lot of learning, a lot of wisdom gained from that. It's a lot of hardship, and it's a lot of people who've been through a lot of hardship. And I think it's important to share stories like that because I think it humanizes you. You're somebody that's running for a leadership position who maybe originally never even thought you'd be running for a leadership position. And people need to know that they can relate to you. People need to know that you're a human being, your feelings, you really do come to the table with empathy and understanding.
I think one of the most important things in raising my daughter, when it was just her and I, that I've always remembered, was when she was 15 and I took her to the J.C. Penney
Mm-hmm.
to get her first summer bathing suit, because now she's 15, and she and being a parent, you're like, go try it on, come out and show me type thing.
Mm-hmm.
She came out with that bathing suit, and I I had to ask some strange woman that I didn't even know. Not strange, the woman wasn't strange, just a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, is that really appropriate? Because I'm
It's
a
hard.
dad. me is she should be fully covered from head to toe. But
Oh yeah.
so
I
got
slightly understand.
It's okay, Dad. Don't worry. It's a bathing suit, and that's what the kids are wearing nowadays. And
I have
I want to get a potato sack and make her wear that.
It's funny. It's hard to balance that as a dad, because we have to have our emotions in check. We have to be looking at reality, but also at the same time, we're protective of our children. We know the evils that lurk out there. We know that there are bad people and bad things happen. And although I'm sure you agree, and maybe you disagree, but I know that women are independent, and they're going to wear what they're going to wear, and they're going to express themselves. And that doesn't give a man a right to do anything. But that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to do something.
No, but I think that's true. I mean, women express themselves in that respect, and men do too. We put on the clothes that we think are making us look even more handsome or better looking, and for other people that have that mindset that, oh my God, somebody's wearing that, a guy's wearing something or a girl's wearing something that makes them look like I want them, they're the problem.
Yeah.
The problem, not the people wearing the clothing, because the people wearing the clothing, getting tattoos or piercings or whatever they want, that's their way of expressing that. And nobody has the right to either try and put them down or tell them that they can't. That's right.
I might not like somebody's hairstyle, but at the end of the day, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Who am I to tell somebody how to live their life?
Well, that's part of, that's the freedoms that we enjoy. You can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't infringe on my rights.
Ed, what do you consider yourself? I know that you're not a Republican. You're not a Democrat. I don't think you're a libertarian. How do you consider your views? What do you think?
I'm an independent. Okay. I've always been a registered independent. Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, however you want to look at it, here in Florida, that became a no party affiliation, which to me is important because, in my opinion, right now, I think America's biggest problem is the two-party system. We get people in office that, if it's a Republican in office, then the Democrats do everything they can to stop his agenda and screw him over, and he has to do all these executive orders, and then vice versa. You get Joe Biden in office, and the Republicans are doing everything they can to stop him and hold him back.
So where's the actual progress?
There is none, because every 4 years it changes.
Yeah, it's just
unless
back
we
and
keep them in
forth.
there for years.
And meanwhile, what's happening across the world?
Been going on since, God, I can remember in Carter. I mean, at least when Carter was in office, and I don't know, this is probably a little bit before your time.
A little before my time, but I'm ready to hear it and learn it too.
When Carter was in office, a lot of people didn't respect him because he was, of course, a Democrat. But what happened was, we were going through an energy crisis at the time, and Carter's way of solving it was turn your heater down and put a sweater on. And all Americans respected that, and they did that. Not all Americans, but the majority of Americans did, because it was our president was speaking to us. And nowadays, I mean, I don't know, Clinton wasn't, Bush wasn't, Obama spoke to the people pretty well. Trump had his sect of people that right now there's a big argument if that's going to be the Republican Party. And I thank God I'm an independent, because I don't have to worry about any of that.
Exactly.
But in all honesty, I think that's America's biggest problem is people are so divided with their party that they no longer see the truth. It's
a hard one. I mean, think about it. Like, for example, I am from the East Coast, right? I'm an East Coast person. I kind of have a big mouth sometimes. I might understand Trump a little more than certain other people do, but at the same time, there's a way to conduct yourself, and that's something as well. And Trump doesn't really have that type of tact, that pizzazz to him. He's kind of like a jackhammer, in a china shop. And I think, though, with everything that's happened, though, regardless of whether people like him or not, they know his policies are solid. And I mean, I feel like, and this is me personally, I'm not representing your views for anybody, hearing this and wanting to vote or not vote for you. But my personal view is that with everything that's happened, with this radicalization of these federal powers, this IRS expansion, the FBI, all of these different things, they're pushing people to vote for him. They're going to, whether you like Trump or not, people are inclined to watch the world burn. This is how humans are wired. We're wired to find the most entertaining thing on TV and put it on. So at this point, people are going to vote for him just to see the sequel. Just to see if he does gut the thing and, put Nancy Pelosi in jail and lock her up. I mean, he's a lame duck president at that point anyway. I personally believe, whether I like him or not, he's going to run. My only hope is that if he does, he picks somebody like your governor, DeSantis, to level him out. Somebody that can express his vision, but, be like, all right, hey, stay off Twitter for today. I got this. Let's crack a beer and I got it. And I'd be happy with that.
I think they tried a couple of times to get him off of Twitter. You know what? I in my time in my life, I've been to New York quite a few times, and I've met a lot of New Yorkers. And honestly, I think Trump's just a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they deal with things, is the way that he dealt with it. That's why he could say, to Kim Jong-un, my button works.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't kidding around.
No.
And whether people liked him or not, he definitely kept America a lot safer in a lot of respects. The countries that swore that they were going to kill all Americans and all of those things, they backed off for the longest time because he was not playing around. I was so impressed when I watched him walk over the line, the north to south, and walk over and handshake Kim Jong-un. And I think Kim Jong-un took a lot into that too. And then we have Mr. Biden. But when it's all said and done, Trump, I think, had some great policies. I think what he was doing showed a lot of people and woke a lot of people up to where our government's at and how just poor. I won't call it a swamp, because a swamp is an excellent thing. I will call it a sewer. Our government right now is nothing more than a sewer.
Oh yeah.
To me personally, it just seems like a lot of people that they're just trying to leech off of every cent that they can, and it's all at the expense of the American taxpayer.
Yep. It doesn't feel any different than watching a movie where you see kings and queens and dukes and duchesses and the peasants. It seems like a buddy system. Seems like people, generations of people making all the money while keeping the bar very, very high and the ceiling very, very low, so people can't get up.
Well, I think, and that would be one of the first things that when I get into office, I am going to do everything in my power to push for is term limits. If we have to have term limits on a president, why don't we have term limits on anybody else in government? We have people in there that have been in there 30, 40, 80, 60 years, 40 years. I think 40 years was the highest, but still, they can't tell me at that point that they actually understand the people, because they're living on a different thing. And then another thing about that too is, why is it that the federal government is paying our people that represent us in the Senate and Congress? Shouldn't that be paid by the states themselves?
I would think so.
Think about it. If the states were paying our congressmen and paying our senators, then we wouldn't hear about, well, they've got these 401ks and they've got these retirement plans and they've got this and they've got that.
That makes sense.
It should be the state and not the federal government, because that's where the government gets this idea of, well, we're just going to keep branching out and become more and more expanded, instead of, okay, we need limited government. And this is one of the ways to ensure that we get that.
So as somebody running for U.S. Senator, you're willing to say right here, right now, you are willing to vote for term limits and abide by term limits on yourself?
Certainly. I don't want to go for any more than one term if I have to, if I'm really showing that there's a big change or difference coming.
Ed, what do you do for work? What'd you do for a living?
Well, you know what? I started out as a union painter. I worked at Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant and was doing sandblasting for probably the first 5 years of getting into the working field. I was 18 at the time. I worked really quickly into a foreman on the job, and we did Turkey Point. We did Port St. Lucie. I learned all about how safe nuclear is and why you got to wear the little tag. And if it goes off, that's not a good thing. And you just have to, you have to respect it just like anything else. After that, I joined the Army and I had a recruiter that told me, you know what, this is the last year that you can become a Green Beret, which was a total lie, but he got me in, and I actually I only spent a year in there because I have a broken leg. When I was a teenager, I was on a motorcycle and I pulled out in front of a Lincoln Continental Mark 6 that was doing 55 miles an hour. It threw me in the air and threw me from the intersection about 45 feet.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
broke both my tibia and fibula. I spent a year in the hospital in about 6 different operations, and they're like, "Oh, you're never going to walk." There was actually a point there where they were going to have to amputate from the knee
My
down.
gosh.
So I joined the army to prove to myself that that wasn't going to happen, and I went through all of the basic training courses. And my first duty station, I was proud to say, was the Second Armored Division, First of the 41st, over in Fort Hood,
Oh
Texas.
man.
When I went into doing airborne, and because I wanted to be airborne, um, a doctor reevaluated my leg and said, "You know what? If that re-breaks, the Army's going to have to pay for you for the rest of your life, and that's not fair." So they gave me an honorable discharge.
Well,
So,
I mean, that still makes you a veteran. I appreciate your service. At any point
well,
during that
I
time, you could have been
appreciate that.
drafted. Something could have happened. You did sign the dotted line for your life.
Yeah, and you know what? The oath never
Yep.
ends. You took that oath to protect and to serve, and I still believe that to be 100% true. After the military, I came back to Miami, and I got myself into a couple of bits of trouble where I ended up having to spend some time in jail. But lesson learned, you have to go through some things in life, and even if it's a stupid mistake, you have to learn that you have to pay for it.
Yep. And
Um,
that's what the judicial
then I
system
met
is
my
supposed
second,
to do. It's supposed to
yep,
allow you that opportunity.
and then I met my second wife, and we were getting out of Miami for quite a few reasons. At the time, there was the big riots were going on there, and I'd never been to Maine, and my real father was from Maine.
Hmm.
So we moved up to Maine, and we lived there for 10 years. And I found out why I love Florida so much. Snow is great in pictures, um, but having to go out and watch a news reporter on TV say, okay, with the wind chill factor, remember, exposed skin can turn to frostbite in so many
Oh my
seconds. It's like,
gosh.
you don't get that down here in Florida,
In
you
Maine, you
know?
can drop dead getting your mail. Freeze
The
to death
stories
getting your mail.
my dad he had a lobster boat. He
Hmm.
worked for the paper mill up there, which was a
Hmm.
big paper mill company up there. But he had a lobster boat. So my first summer, he's like, "Hey, you want to go lobstering with me?" And I'm like, "Sure. I've never done it before. I don't know anything about it. So sure." So we're talking 400 traps, 100 that we drop, 100 we pick up a day. That means we're out at 3 o'clock in the morning while the water's still, and you're pulling traps. And the way he taught me was, you have a long stick with a hook on the end of it. They call it a gaff,
Hmm.
and you have to hook underneath the buoy. You put it up over the pulley that's hanging out on a bar in the boat, and you pull the trap up. Now they're 80 to 150 feet. So after a while, you've learned, your arms and your everything is. I mean, it's tedious work, but it's also really enjoyable, beautiful scenery and stuff. So long story short, second summer comes around, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to do it again?" I'm like, "Yeah, we made some good money." He said, "Okay, here's this big box with this giant wheel on it. He said, install this on the boat on the same side as the pulley on the arm out there." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what is it?" He says, "Well, that's a pot hauler. When you put the buoy over the pulley, you wrap it around that and you step on the pedal and it pulls the trap up for you."
Oh, shoot.
I'm
Really?
like, "Dad, why didn't we have that last year?" He says, "Oh, you wouldn't have had the experience now, would you, son?"
Oh, that's funny. That's so funny.
Yes. So I learned a lot when I was up in Maine. He taught me how to hunt and how to sight and all of the great things. I
Yeah.
mean, I learned a lot of that in the army, but there's a lot different when it comes to hunting. And when you think about what the Japanese said about there's somebody being behind a blade of grass everywhere in America,
Hmm.
a lot of countries don't realize that the majority of our hunters in any military situation would be considered snipers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They could sit up in a tree for hours and wait for something to come by at 500 yards and drop it.
I always believed that if we were ever invaded, they'd only be able to take the coasts. They would take the coasts, and then we would come back, and it would not be fun, but it wouldn't be well for everyone. They'd have to nuke us. I mean, just
well, it would definitely start in the cities because they couldn't go into the countryside and come back out.
No, that's what I mean. They could get to the coasts, but they're not coming much further than that. And then they're going to get blockaded by our own Navy. So it's very complicated.
Then, on my second wife, yes. We were up in Maine, and I made a horrible mistake and decided that I thought the grass was going to be greener. And I was working for a credit card company, and met this young girl and decided that I'm gonna change who I am and what I am. And at that point, we had moved down to Florida. And then I got the phone call from my daughter one day saying, "Dad, can I come and live with you? Mom's been killed."
Oh my gosh.
And she was dating a guy who thought that if he couldn't have her, nobody could.
Oh my
and he
gosh.
shot and killed her in front of my daughter and then killed himself.
That's so terrible.
That's how I got my daughter. A lot of people are going to wonder that. And it wasn't the way I thought, because she was a wonderful woman and certainly never deserved that. She didn't deserve what I did. But you can't change what happens in life. You only have to learn how to deal with it.
I think that's a lesson for a lot of people that they would benefit from right now. And I'm going to ask you this on the air. I want to know if you're okay with me not editing that out, or do you want people to know that story about you?
No, that's fine. I understand they're going to know it one way or another, believe me.
Yeah, the transparency and the honesty is appreciated by people. And I think it's important for our listeners and the people watching to know that you're a human. You've been through stuff. You've had your heart broken. You're one of us. You're not from some elite group of folks backed by some shady company somewhere. You're just a man who's been through some hard times, who's worked his butt off, who's raised a family, who's just like everybody else, who wants to see the right things go down. Sick and tired of the BS.
And that's exactly where it's at. I'm now in my third wife and very happy. We've been together 15 years now. When I moved back here to Central Florida, one of the things that I did was I got to working at the theme parks, Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, and I actually worked my way up to being a superintendent. I was running $1.5 million, $2 million jobs for them, trying to create that fantasy of just beautiful. It's always been interesting to me. Disney was one of the greatest things. I don't know if you know anything about Disney, but they have an extravagant tunnel system underneath.
I've heard about that.
They do it. They've got call centers and they've got medics and they've got cafeterias, but every tunnel takes you anywhere. But one of the greatest things that I always thought was, if you go to Disney at night, around back, there's like 8 different gates, and sitting at each gate is trades of everything from carpenters to plumbers to you name it. They're waiting for the last guest to leave. And once that last guest leaves, those gates open up and in comes this army of every trade you can imagine.
Whoa.
By 7:00 in the morning, they're completely gone and you never knew they were there. So
they're just there to make the park perfect again.
Every night. Huh. It was an amazing experience to be a part of.
But I was about to go into some questions, but what you just told me made me kind of think of a question off the fly that I honestly didn't write down to talk to you during this. How do you feel with all of the news that comes out about so Disney being by itself is amazing, right? There's amazing tunnel system. There's all these great technologies. But as we've seen recently, a lot of large companies, including Disney, seem to have some influence on the international scale from China. I've noticed that there's been a lot of things going around where whether it's the basketball teams here or the shoe manufacturers or even Disney, they seem to cater a certain way to different countries and treat us a certain way. And it almost seems like because of the money, they're allowing influences to come in and almost influence us here. I wanted to know how you feel about that. Do you think there's a separation? Do you think there's a corporate Disney and then just a regular Disney where people work there and don't really realize what's happening on that larger scale? Or, there's a lot of things that seem to happen within Disney, almost like it's its own country, I would say. So I would ask you just for a short synopsis of what you think on a national scale. Is Disney good for this country or bad?
I think that what's happened with Disney and what's happened with a lot of companies and corporations out there is they've followed the trend. And right now the trend is woke. And when they realize that that's not really the correct way to go, Disney, just like any other company, should not be in politics. That's not their place. To take Aunt Jemima off of a pancake box is dumb. I'm sorry. That's the same in the same respect as pronouns. I don't believe that there's a need for any of that. I think that that's just another fad that's going to end. But when it comes to China, I still go back to what Trump had said, and not that, I appreciate it, and I did vote for Trump. I also voted for Obama, but I believe that what he said was right. China is one of our biggest threats, and people don't realize that. What got me, I think one of the biggest things that got me was at the very beginning of the pandemic, to hear people say, well, we don't have medical equipment. We have to wait for it to be shipped from China.
Yeah, that was rough.
To me, that was one of the most devastating things. The fact that they were supplying with arm masks and many other medical equipment that we have the ability to make right here in America is just preposterous as far as I'm concerned. It's to the point of insulting.
I mean, if they were to just cut us off, what would happen?
Exactly. And the fact that we have the ability to do all these things, and yet we're not doing them. Now, there's been talk of, well, corporations are moving out and this and that. You know what? Another thing that I think that I would like to really bring to the floor in the Senate is changing the tax code, either the flat tax or the fair tax, but have an open discussion with the people about what it means, because our tax codes have gotten to the point to where people are ready to drive to Boston and start throwing tea in the water because they're so tired with the silliness of the taxes that we have. And then you hear there's all these loopholes, and if they hire the right people, the rich people get away with this, that, and the other. You know what? Let's look at a flat tax. Let's look at a fair tax, see which one is more equitable for the country, what's going to be the most beneficial, and let's move on, because the tax system that we have right now is ridiculous.
What do you think of the 87,000 tax people, the IRS agents they're about to hire with the signing of the anti-inflation bill that just passed?
I think that was a ridiculous move. We could have used those people on the southern border. We could have used those people in a lot of other places. And the fact that they actually hired them with the idea of learning how to use deadly force is just intimidating to a lot of people, which in my opinion, is the same thing that they did with the January 6 people in not giving them due process. We in America are allowed due process. We are innocent until proven guilty, and holding these people in jail for as long as they have without that due process is at the least un-American.
I agree with you. Ed, before we get into a couple questions that I put together for you, because I think we've established you love your country. I think we've established I love my country. I kind of sense the same thing off you. There's a flag behind you and everything. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, some constitutional questions, things that I came up with that I think would be important on the national level. But before I ask you those questions, real quick, I want to know how exactly people can vote for you. All right. So when is the primary? When's everything happen? What's the date? What do they need to do? Before we get into this, I mean, because we're about halfway through our interview here. I want people to not lose that in this. If they really believe in you, if they're from Florida, if they love everything they're saying, if they're like, man, I want a guy like Edward Gray in the Senate. I don't want Marco Rubio or Demings or any of these people. How can they vote for you?
Well, it'll come down in November. There's going to be on the ballot. You'll have for U.S. Senate. You'll have Marco Rubio and the R beside him, and you'll have probably Val Demings, because I believe she's going to be the candidate that the Democrats choose, and she'll have a D beside her. Under that, there will be a blank line that you can write in my name, and it should be Edward A. Gray, Gray, because I am a write-in candidate. I filed all the paperwork necessary and went through all the hoops and stuff necessary so that the state does recognize that I am running for United States Senate.
You know, I don't know about you, but I think it would be a big, big message to the system, a big FU from young people. If we could get thousands and thousands of young people to see your message, see what you stand for, and get their butts to the polls and actually write some names in, I think that would prove to young people that our Constitution works.
And that's the truth, because we still are a country that's based on what the rule of the people have to say and believe in. And if the people get out and vote, then they're the ones that are actually making their voices heard. And that's how you do it, by voting.
Exactly. So I'm going to start with a couple questions here. We're going to start with the 10th Amendment. All right, Ed?
Okay.
The 10th Amendment. All right. You ready? We're going to get into this. We're going to have some back and forth. I might ask some follow-up questions, but we're going to get to the meat of a couple issues that are important to Americans and how you feel about them. All right.
Okay.
So the 10th Amendment, it makes clear that the United States was designed as a federal republic, a constitutional federal republic, with the federal government's powers being limited to what is delineated in the United States Constitution. So with that being said, and I can always repeat myself, has the federal government violated this amendment? Have they taken liberties that the founders never intended for the federal government to possess? And if you believe that they have, how would you put the power back in the hands of the states and hold the government accountable?
Yeah, I honestly, I do believe that the federal government has become too absorbed in itself and is trying its best to become the power of the country. And that's never the intent of the government. I realize that the government does have to have control of certain things. We do have to have certain things, but the government itself was the federal government is supposed to be limited, and the states are the ones that are supposed to hold the power. And we need to really look at some of the things that have been changed over the years and some of the things that have been passed over the years that gave the government these types of powers that they shouldn't have. We can go into the three-letter agencies, which there's a lot of questions that people have about those. We can go into the military, and the military itself. I mean, originally it was supposed to be states had militias. We've become such a large country that now we have military branches, and that's good in the sense that that's part of the government. But we also have to realize that there are the three separate entities of the government, and we have the Supreme Court, and we have the president, and we have Congress for those types of things. And we have to go back to making it that the people are the ones that are in those offices, and the people themselves are the ones that are making the decisions for the country.
So would you push for transparency and accountability for all of these agencies and a possible shrinking of them?
I think, we've heard this push for transparency I can't begin to tell you how many administrations. I think that we need to change how this government works, in the sense that instead of allowing these agencies to have a free run, there should be more control and more that they have to stand up and answer to. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, since we're on the same page about government power and too much of it, let's go into another question here. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution, I'm not expecting you to know where that is, I just said that for our viewers if they want to look it up, limits the federal government to owning 10 square miles that make up Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, the lands necessary for the, quote, forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, end quote, which it must purchase with the consent of state legislatures, right? So, once upon a time, Hillary Clinton brokered a deal to sell access to 20% of the U.S.'s uranium reserves to Russia, okay? Now, with that being said, the Biden administration in all of their wisdom here, whether it's purposeful, whether it's non-purposeful, it was an accident, it doesn't matter. What matters is there's a domestic energy crisis that's been created. They did that by placing these moratoriums on oil and gas leases, and the federal government is quoted as owning as much as 640 million acres of land in the United States, not 10 square miles, 640 million acres. So with that being said, and I'll give the audience a second to grasp that giant number, 640 million acres, all right, in the United States. Is the federal government's land grab constitutional? And if it isn't constitutional, what would you do to address the federal government's taking of state lands and violating the sovereignty of the states that those lands are supposed to belong to?
No, I don't think it is constitutional, and I would definitely want to look into, fight, and change that. I think the states should be responsible for the states, and that includes their land. If they've been turned into parks, if they've been turned in or not been able to drill, I think that should be up to the states to decide that. That shouldn't be up to the federal government to make those decisions. In an example, I will never okay drilling offshore. After the fiasco that we had, where they were drilling so deep that they had no way of turning off a pipe, that will never happen again as long as I have the ability to say something about it.
Would you be okay with drilling in Alaska on land?
You know what? That goes back to Alaska. I remember that the Alaskan governor came along and said that, you know what, we could supply all the oil that this country needs if the federal government
300 years of oil in Alaska. It's something like 200 or 300 years of oil in Alaska. It's a lot.
Yeah. And it's ridiculous because it's through all of what he thinks he's doing is right, which is what the progressives are controlling right now. This is not the correct way to do it. You're talking about a country that has been reliant on gas and oil for a long time now, almost a century, to be able to say, okay, everybody's going to be taken off. That's preposterous. That's ridiculous and ludicrous in so many ways. You have to have some type of viable way of changing things over, something that is shown to be proven. And we're not at that point yet with our backup systems, our electrical grid, with wind power and solar power, etc. There's a lot that still needs to be done. Nuclear power plants are one of the biggest opportunities that we have, and yet we'll fight those because they're afraid that something's going to happen. Look, I was in a nuclear power plant when I was 20. I'm 60 now. I'm not green. I don't glow at night. I don't have any problems with anything nuclear. Everything's fine. People need to back off and say, science, we believe in science because we've heard that before. And we need to trust that the scientists say that it's okay.
You know, I personally believe, that nuclear energy, if we would just keep researching it and keep using it and making it safer and safer, that's the real green energy. That's the real green deal right there. If we could just utilize that and we could really show people how safe it actually is, instead of making bombs with it, we could power the world. We could do things we never thought possible. I really believe that.
Well, that and we have access to one of the greatest absolute powers out there, the sun. It provides so much. If there wasn't so much hindrance on the solar companies and solar panel systems out there, all across the state, you can drive now in Florida and you'll see solar farms everywhere. And that's a beginning, but we're nowhere yet ready for everybody to have an electric vehicle and everybody to be able to depend on the system yet.
It doesn't make sense.
We need more research to ensure that we are capable of making that transition.
Sure. Well, while we're on the subject of nuclear power and still talking about what we're talking about before we go too far off the grid here, we talked to you, no pun intended. We talked a second ago. I said Hillary Clinton, once upon a time, she brokered a deal. And this deal, I believe, is still ongoing. We sell 20% of our U.S. uranium reserves to Russia. All right. That's coming from some of that land in the States that no states have approved from. right? So let's relate this for a second to something that's really on the top of a lot of people's tongues. It's been going on, the Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war, which, I mean, to me, it's kind of like a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia at this point. But if you look at it, I want to know how much you think that these land grabs and these international deals have helped or hurt the war effort in Ukraine? And should we even be helping them? Should we be minding our own business on the national stage? Should we be taking care of the people here at home? Or should we be spending these billions and billions of dollars sending things over to Ukraine, including these resources that states never approved to let go of?
Well, I've always gone by the motto that you can't help others until you're okay. And America is far from being okay right now. We still have people that are homeless. We have a major problem with the influx of refugees coming in. We have vets that are being, in my opinion, mistreated in many ways. And we've got our problems here. We should not be. The European Union and NATO are supposed to be in control of things like that, and we should be letting them lead, helping if need, but not sending billions of dollars over there over and over again. I think we've done 3 or 4 times we've sent over $40 billion to them. Oh my God, you know how many people that could have housed and how much food that could have put out there for here Americans that are dying because we're sending it over there because we think it's a good idea.
Hey, let me ask you a question. How close do you think Afghanistan and Iraq are to the Ukraine? It's not that far, I would say, right? It's right up the street, kind of. A couple countries over.
They're same continent, I think.
Don't you think? And you could say yes or no or respond to this however you want. But I'm coming with this one off the fly. But don't you think those billions and billions and billions of dollars of military equipment we just left there for the Taliban could have went to much better use in Ukraine, and we could have used our tax dollars for something here at home?
Most certainly, that was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, and I still sympathize with that young what was he? Was he a major? I think he was with the Marines that said,
Stu
we
Scheller.
need to answer that, but then he lost everything because he actually spoke out because he didn't go through the chain of command, and agreed. In the military, you have to follow your chain of command, but what happened there was a complete debacle in so many ways, and we should not be leaving. We just outfitted an entire army.
I agree.
What we did when we left all that equipment in Afghanistan. So if there's another scuffle in that area when we get down into that area, we can expect that we're going to have a hard fight this time. It won't be an easy one. Not that any of the wars were ever easy or any of our conflicts were ever easy. So don't let people think that I'm saying war is easy, because it's not. But I'm just saying that it's not going to be. It's going to be a lot harder because we gave them some of our best equipment, and that was the stupidest thing. And there's still. Do you know there's still people over there?
Yes.
That are American.
Yes, it's something we all try to get out. Nobody hears about it.
How can that be?
Yeah, hundreds of Americans and thousands of people that helped us still being hunted by the Taliban, and yet nobody hears about it.
And it makes me angry to think that that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. And really quick, let me just throw this out there since we mentioned Stu Scheller. Shout out to Stu Scheller big shout out to Stu Scheller Senior connection on my LinkedIn. One of the people I talked to on there. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for what your son did. Hoo-yah. All right, let me let's take this back home since we're talking about bombs and guns and war. Let's take this back home for a second. All right. We're going to take this to some Second Amendment talk. And that's something a lot of people are interested in. Most Americans are gun rights advocates. We all want to make sure we're protected here. Our country was founded on this. This is something that most other countries, they don't even understand. They can't comprehend it because their country wasn't founded on a bloody revolution where people were taking their rights away. It just wasn't. So now that we're at that part, all right, our laws that infringe upon the rights of the people to keep and bear arms, like red flag laws, like we mentioned earlier, the ones that Rubio voted for, arbitrary age restrictions and limitations on what arms an American citizen is permitted to own, do you find that to be constitutional? And if so, When elected, how would you address laws that unconstitutionally, infringe upon people's Second Amendment rights?
I think the Second Amendment is quite clear. People have the right to keep and bear arms. And if you look at the three different sentences in there that are separated by the commas, each one is a different meaning. We're supposed to have a militia that's supposed to be regulated by the states. The people are supposed to keep and bear arms is another one which shall not be infringed. In my opinion, gun laws, all gun laws, need to be dropped. We don't have any right to hinder law-abiding citizens. Now, a lot of people say, well, we should keep the registration and shouldn't this and shouldn't that. You know what? When I lived in Maine, you could go into a gun store and buy a gun. You didn't have to fill out any paperwork. This was back in the 80s. And it was okay because everybody was hunters. There are 700 million, I think it is the number that we have as far as hunters in the country.
I think it's a lot. It's a large majority. I think you might have an extra zero on that, like 70 million. There's a very large number because there's 300 million. Yeah,
I would have to pull up the numbers, but I know
it's a huge number. Yeah.
If we were the problem, as far as that's concerned, because I have a CCP. I have my concealed weapons permit.
Here,
I've got my weapons. I've got my AR and all of those things. If we were the problem, people would know about it. We're not the problem. And then the other argument is, well, it's because your guns are stolen. Well, you know what? We take care of our guns, and it's very rare that our guns are stolen. You're going to find that most of the guns are shipped in from other countries, and they're bought. Like they found there was shipments that came into the port here in I think it was here in on the East Coast, that they found a shipment of guns in one of the shipping containers, and that was getting ready to go to New York. So at this point, what we have is all these laws that are restricting law-abiding citizens and making it so they're unsafe to walk on the streets, while criminals who don't obey laws can go out and shoot up. One of the stupidest things to me, in my opinion, was to ever put a building and put gun-free zone on it. That's like saying, I'm a target, please come in here, because nobody's going to shoot back at you. All Americans deserve the right to defend themselves. And if we remove these gun laws and allow people to carry, you know what? You're going to find a lot less of this type of stuff ever happening anymore.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to ask you a question, though, relating to what you just said. A lot of folks who are even on the 2A side have had this interesting point of view in regard to social media, because we're living in this different time, right? Social media has changed a lot of the way that society functions. And this might be a little difficult question, but I don't ever hear anybody asking it. And I think it's very important. It's a very difficult one for even myself to answer, because I agree with everybody's right to bear arms, but it's true. Social media has made a lot of difference. And I think maybe it needs to be studied more, but I think this question needs to be asked. So do you agree or disagree with checking the juvenile social media history of an 18-year-old making their first ever firearm purchase as part of the background search procedure? Why or why not?
Well, if we went the way that I was saying, then there wouldn't be any question about that, because we wouldn't be having background checks.
Okay.
A lot of people feel more secure with the background checks, and I can understand that. I can understand if we were going to keep the background checks, that we should have a national register for all of them. And if we're going to go that far, then if you're in one state and you are approved to get that permit, then that should cover you for every state. That shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to, this is that difficult thing of, the government can say these things, but it's up to the states to adopt them.
Yeah.
And if some states say, no, I don't want to adopt that, then that's their right. That's the individuality of the United States, is we have those abilities to do that. And right now we're being hindered because our government is trying to tell us what to believe and what to do, instead of giving us the options.
I think that's a perfect segue to get into the states a little, talk about judicial power. Since we're talking about power, we're talking about federal power. You know, Article 3 is all about the states. It's all about judicial power, right? And it's all about states' rights compared to judicial power. And so a lot of folks, they really don't understand how our Supreme Court works. They really don't understand how the power is distributed through branches, how the state's power works, how federal government compared to state government works. And we saw that with the recent Roe v. Wade ruling. We saw people freaking out, young people protesting as if they never took a class before to understand how laws are made, what the Congress does, what the justices do, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, the Supreme Court, they've now been accused of actually violating the United States Constitution itself. So my question to you is, do you believe that the Supreme Court's decisions, any decision, right, any decision at all, whether it's Roe v. Wade or something else, do you believe that the Supreme Court is the final say in the land? And do you believe we should follow the constitutional process when making laws in this country? And if so, how would that benefit or disadvantage an American?
No, I honestly do believe that the Supreme Court is the final say when it comes to final judgments on our judicial system. Every state has that ability to go through their circuit courts, and even they have their own state Supreme Court systems. But when it comes to that final, if it's such an important issue that it makes to the federal government Supreme Court, that should be the end of it. What their decision is should be the end of it, because that was part of the 3 tiers that were set up so that we had that power separated but concentrated in DC. And as far as the Roe v. Wade thing, I would be happy to answer about that if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I personally am pro-life. I believe that everything is there for a reason. And to me, I think one of the biggest issues that people are missing of this my body, my choice thing, it wasn't your body alone the night you got pregnant. And the
Very
fact
true.
that if you decide to have that baby and you can't pay for it, the state's going to do everything they can to find the partner that helped you get pregnant and have that baby. So it's not my body, my choice. You know what? You want to get a heart operation, or if you want to get Botox or whatever, that's your body, your choice. But when it comes to making a child, 2 eggs can't make a child. 2 sperms can't make a child. It takes 2 consenting people to come together to make a child, and it should take 2 consenting people. Now, my wife said, well, in that respect, what if they both said that they wanted abortion? I think an abortion is wrong. I think there's so many other avenues. But you know what? In America, that's your choice. And that's something they'll have to live with. I'm not going to tell you what I think you should do, because I'm not God.
I have a very similar belief. You know, I feel like I feel like the founders were very smart. Let's put it like that. They designed this country in such a way that a bunch of people that didn't agree back then could get along and function together. I mean, they knew. When you read the constitutional papers that go along with the Constitution, when they wrote all of the different, I think there's 58 or 59 papers, they talk about how they didn't want people from the states to come vote in Washington because they didn't want gunfights to break out in Washington over voting, because we never got along. That's what these young people and all these people that have forgotten history, they don't remember. We never agreed on everything. The Constitution is built in a way that allows a patchwork of states with differing views to work together. So for me, I also am pro-life, right? I am a very modern conservative, as you say, Republican, liberal. I don't even know how to describe myself, because there's a lot of things I'm supportive of that people on the right might not agree with, but there's a lot of things that they would agree with. And when it comes to abortion, again, I'm pro-life. But with that being said, the Constitution comes first in my eyes. So if the state over the majority of those people want to do something I don't agree with, yes, I don't like it. But in this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's wrong, I think, but you have the right to do it in your space.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to come over there and tell you how to conduct business. You don't come over here and tell me how to conduct business.
And that's the point. As long as what you're doing doesn't hinder what I want to do, that's your choice and that's your decision.
Exactly. So before we get to some fun questions, I've got one last big question here. All right. You ready for it? All right. We're talking about justice here. We're talking about all Americans under one law system. That's where the judicial power, the Supreme Court, all those things, it trickles down to that. It's supposed to be equal under the eyes of the law. The Fifth Amendment guarantees that no citizen will be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So right now there's a guy named Jeremy Brown. He's a January 6th defendant. He's been held without bond or bail for 326 plus days while awaiting trial. Mr. Brown's request for a compassionate release to care for his sick mother was just denied as well. Regardless of what we feel about January 6th, our entire justice system is built on a system based on innocent until proven guilty. Do you personally believe this is a violation of Mr. Brown's rights to due process? And if so, what actions would you take to hold judges accountable for violating the constitutional rights of any American citizen?
Yeah, I firmly believe that this is against the Constitution, and it is against the basic laws that were set up here in the United States. You are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and you are supposed to be given due process. I think, to me personally, and to many people that I've spoken with, the reason that they're doing this is because they want to scare Americans from ever doing something like what they felt happened on January 6th. And Mr. Brown, along with others that are there, I will be there. I will find every way I can to make sure that I am in there, pulling you guys, helping you guys, getting you out of there. The due process system is supposed to be one of our major rights, and I do not see that being applied to these people at all.
No, me neither. It's pretty sad, to tell you the truth, because
it really is.
I'm going to say something that a lot of people are not going to like me saying, but if it was Antifa people locked up behind there, I would still be advocating for them to be released.
And it's true, because they have every right. But if you listen to Jerry, what's his name, the congressman, Antifa's just a dream. There's no such thing.
Nadler, Jerry Nadler. Yeah,
Nadler,
fantasy world Nadler. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things out there that America has to be aware of, and we need to actually stop the baloney of, okay, you know what, your opinion is different than my opinion. That doesn't mean that we can't get along. That doesn't mean that we can't work together, because this country requires us all to work towards the same goal. We all want the same thing. We all want to be able to live our lives in the way we feel fit. We want to raise our family. Some of us never want to go and be anything. I mean, many people play the lottery, but they still work every day because they just want to live a regular life. I never thought I would get into politics, but after watching the last, couple of elections, when it came down to it, I just felt like it was time for me, as a regular American, as a blue collar worker, to stand up and say, you know what, I've had enough of this stupidity. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to push to make the changes that are necessary, that I see, that millions of Americans I've spoken with see need to be changed.
I think that's a great message. I really do. I'm going to ask you a couple quick fun questions here. But before we get to these questions, let me ask you, Ed, how tell people how they can reach you again. Tell them your websites, if you have any social media, any video platforms. And then right after that, tell them how they can vote for you again.
Certainly. My original website is The American Patriot Movement, all one word, and it has to be theamericanpatriotmovement.com. On there, you will see my stances as far as what I'm proposing as running for United States Senator. But again, it's theamericanpatriotmovement.com. You can also reach me through my email, which is edwardforsenate@yahoo.com. I'm on Facebook, Edward A. Gray for U.S. Senate. I'm on Rumble, as same thing, Edward A. Gray for U.S. Senate. I'm on YouTube, same thing, Edward A. Gray for U.S. Senate. I'm on MeWe. I'm on Twitter.
Everywhere.
I'm on as many social media platforms as I can handle.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to get the word out of who I am. On Twitter, I think I'm not under Edward A. Gray. I'm under Enforcer 34758.
Ah,
Old handle,
that's
but
all right. It's a good handle. It's a good
yes.
handle. It's better than mine. Mine's uncensored AR.
Oh, and Gab. I use Gab a lot. I like Gab. It's very nice. I like it. Compares a lot to Facebook. I like it.
Yeah, it has an easy interface. Sometimes with Gab, I have an issue just because, Gab is a great place for freedom of speech. But then when you allow in freedom of speech, you also have to allow in some negative freedom of speech that you don't like. And I've had let's say I've had some colorful experiences on Gab. But the system, Gab, like when I've had issues with it, for example, you can message somebody that's in the office there and they'll actually talk to you and sometimes work with you. It's a nice system. So tell people again, because we know the primaries are coming up, right? But we know that the big voting's in November. So tell people again exactly how they can vote for Edward A. Gray.
Well, when it comes down to November and you get into that voting booth, you're going to see United States Senate and you'll see Marco Rubio. You'll see Val Demings, and underneath that will be a blank space, and that's where you can fill out my name, Edward A. Gray, Gray, and it must be filled out exactly like that because the state requires and the federal government requires that if I put it in when I put in that I'm running for this, that this is how I want it filled out, everybody has to exactly put that in or your vote won't count for me. But it's Edward A. Gray.
Perfect. All right, Ed, we're going to ask you a couple quick questions here, all right? You ready?
Go.
All right,
Ready.
Ed, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
What's your favorite food?
Steak.
All right, your favorite meat. Wait. How do you like that steak cooked?
Medium rare.
All right, perfect. Good answer. How do you what's your favorite music?
I like the Dennis Leary, I think it was.
Oh, yes. Dennis Leary.
Give me a cow, I'll eat what I want and ride the rest home.
And I'll ride the rest home. Yep, I remember that. That's a great album. No Cure for Cancer. Favorite music. Cure for Cancer. Favorite music. That was
such a great album.
Gotta go. Favorite music. Hit it.
Van Halen. I'm rock and roll, but I also love country.
All right. Hell yeah. A little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. Any talents we don't know about?
Talents. I can fix anything.
So you're a jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, yeah.
All right, jack of all trades.
Raising children. I think that was another big talent that I have.
That's a big one too. That very much is. That takes a lot of work. It's not, it's hard for a woman and for a man. Karaoke, yes or no?
I love karaoke.
Beer, whiskey, wine, or tap water?
Beer.
All right, beer. And you said you're married?
Yes.
3 children?
I have 1 child, and then my third wife, has 2 boys of her own. So, yes, 3 altogether.
That's all right. I have a stepdaughter. She's my child, too. Your idea of a perfect day?
Florida.
Just Florida?
Oh, my God. Florida.
What do you love about Florida?
From the sunrise to the sunsets, an hour each way, you're at any beach you want. I mean, there's just so many things. If you want to fantasize and go to the theme parks, if you want to go back into time and go to St. Augustine or other antique places, Coral Castle, which I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but I loved Coral Castle growing up down in southern Florida.
That's awesome.
There's just so much here and so much to do. Fruit and vegetables and just everything you could ever want is right here. And in all honesty, we have one of the greatest governors that any state could have.
Oh yeah, Ron DeSantis.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I would say it's safe to say that Edward A. Gray loves Florida.
Edward A. Gray learned a long time ago that Florida is his home.
Edward A. Gray, you've done a lot. You've done a lot in this world. You have a lot of life experience, from lobstering to being a union painter, a Disney superintendent. Your honorable discharge from the U.S. military. You're a real life human, just like me, just like all the people listening here. Edward A. Gray is a real life person with real world ideas running for the U.S. Senate. Ed, thank you so much for coming on here and spending time with us and letting people get to know the real you as a person, as a human.
And I thank you so much, sir, for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak with you and to be able to speak to everybody out there. Again, this is, to me, very important. We have one country and we have this chance to change it and take it back to the way that we all feel that it needs. And we all have to work together to do this. We love this country, all of us. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, progressive. You know what? Let's get rid of the labels. We're all Americans, and we all want to be able to stay free. Let's do this, people.
We're all Americans and we all want to stay free. A powerful message. Edward A. Gray, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great evening in beautiful Florida. I see that fire going. I see it's nice and dark behind you, but that fire is lighting up beautiful Old Glory, nice and bright. God bless, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you so much. I found this to be a very insightful, a very special episode. I connected really well with Mr. Edward A. Gray. He seemed like a really, really great guy, and I liked his ideas. I liked a lot of the things he talked about. And though we didn't see eye to eye on everything, I mean, most things we did, but not everything we see eye to eye on. We do agree on one thing. We agree on a lot of things, but we agree on the fact that we should be able to have these differences and still come to the table and make something happen. And you know, folks, I believe the only way we'll ever do that, the only way we'll solve our problems is through the U.S. Constitution. At the end of the day, we didn't get along back then and we don't get along now. Our founding fathers designed this system, designed this country to stitch together a bunch of people that didn't necessarily see eye to eye so we could work together and make this the great nation it is today. If we get back to basics, maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to restore this country to the superpower it once was just so recent ago. Folks, I'd like to thank Edward A. Gray for coming on the show. I'd like to thank the Constitutional Party of the United States, CPOTUS, that's cpotus.org, for putting us up to this. I'd like to give you some contact information for Edward A. Gray. You can reach him at edwardforsenate@yahoo.com. That's edwardforsenate@yahoo.com. You can also find out anything you want about him at www. Now, anything you want, not meaning maybe his personal life, but his views, everything that you need to know about his standpoints, what he stands for, what he's going to do for you in the U.S. Senate in Florida. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find him at www.theamericanpatriotmovement.com. That's the American Patriot Movement. Sounds and spells just like it sounds. theamericanpatriotmovement.com. Twitter, Enforcer34758. You can find him all over most social media at Edward for U.S. Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find us at Uncensored AR all over the internet. You can look up this podcast, the audio version. Just type in ARP anywhere podcasts are found. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, wherever the hell you're going. I can't even imagine bringing up Deezer. Who listens on Deezer? It's like one guy in France listening on Deezer, okay? Whatever you're listening, iHeartRadio, we're there too. Anywhere you're listening, okay? ARP. All right, at Uncensored AR, like I said, that's our social media. If you're watching this, you'll see it plastered all over the screen. American Reveille, REVEILLE.com, or simply go to AR.WTF. That's the website. Folks, straight talk right now. We need to make this happen. We need to keep this podcast going. If you're into crypto, all right, take your phone, put it on the camera, scan the QR code, and give a little bit to the tip jar here. We put a lot of effort in, and we want to make sure that that money goes right back into what we're doing. I'm not going to go to Taco Bell with it, okay? We're going to use it for American Reveille. And like we've said before, the old-fashioned way, www.ar.wtf, hit the donate button, hit the tab that's inside there, and give what you can, okay? Folks, this was an awesome episode. I really, really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. I hope it was very, very insightful. I wish Edward A. Gray the best of luck. He told you how to vote. Now make sure you get out and exercise your God-given constitutional rights. Folks, this has been episode 188 of American Reveille Podcast. That's ARP, episode 188, and I will see you next week. Bye.